When I visited colleges, even as a younger person, I was assessing the accessibility to a riding stable, because all good liberal arts colleges would be fine for me that were non-urban. But by golly, that was going to be the deciding factor for me. And believe it or not, it was. It was completely the deciding factor and one of the best decisions I ever made, in my life. It made for a very fulfilling college experience. So sometimes, parents, you never know.
Hey, Susan, how are you?
I'm good, Mark. How about you?
Good. I'm excited to take another question. Friends, if you're new to the Your Housebound Kid YouTube channel, we were audio for about 9 years, and now we're coming over to YouTube to try to help fulfill our mission of making college knowledge available to all. And we're doing a series where we are answering some of the most commonly asked questions we get either on the counseling side or the admission side. And today we're going to take on this question: how do I know which colleges to visit? And it's a question we get asked a lot. Susan, how do you answer it when someone says to you, you've recommended 15 colleges for me. I don't know if I can visit them all. Which one should I visit?
Well, I'd even like to back up before you have a college list and to have families think about incorporating college visits with their kids at a younger age, not admissions office visits, but getting children on college campuses. If you're out in Michigan visiting grandparents, or you're up in Maine dropping off kids at summer camp, visiting college and university campuses it's the shopping stage, where as a family, you're kind of giving yourself exposure to the full range of options that are out there, visiting something large, small, residential, commuter, urban, rural, suburban. It really doesn't matter. And often families start local. You don't have to be on a big trip. You can start, I grew up in New York City, so it was kind of easy. And my dad was an artist, and he studied at NYU. So I kind of grew up kicking around the NYU campus, but I went to Columbia and Barnard for, school trips and lectures. And the more I got out there, the more I realized that my stereotypes of what a college campus and college experience was like were really narrow, that I had a world of options. And it was a great education. Wherever we went on vacation, my father took us to the college or the university art galleries. So we were kind of always traipsing around and looking at things. And, I grew up understanding that I didn't want to go to college in an urban, I lived in an urban setting,
Sure.
in an apartment building, and nature brought out my best. So I knew so you learn things about yourself as a young person by exposure, and in a non-threatening, non-evaluative way. I remember when I was working in admissions for the liberal arts college in Maine, in the summer, we would have groups of bicyclists come through, families, camp groups of high school kids who were biking from, Cape Cod to Arcadia National Park or something like that. And they would call a few days ahead and say, is there a shower on campus? We don't know what the campground is like that we're staying at, but can we come in an hour early? And our receptionist she was just great. She's like, I'm going to set it all up for you. Here's where you go. And then they would show up in our office, in their, khakis or skirts and ready for their interview and their campus tour, and their bikes would be parked outside. And, I was thinking, you could have just come in your, your gear, but they weren't going to do that. They were going to, zhuzh it up a little bit for the up close and personal part. But, they're just ways to incorporate this, shopping experience with younger kids. So, once your kids are like in later elementary school, middle school years, just start getting them on campuses. Of course, summer programs often are held. Camps, Johns Hopkins CTY program are on college campuses all over the country, and, great experiences. So anyway, that to me is kind of, don't be all that selective with when your kids are younger. Think of it as exposure, of trying on different things, and not saying to your seventh grader, this is how you're going to decide where you're going to go to college. Just go and say, hey, I hear they have an amazing ice hockey arena here. Let's go see if we can take a look at it. Your kid's a hockey player. When I visited colleges, even as a younger person, I was assessing the accessibility to a a riding stable, because all good liberal arts colleges would be fine for me that were non-urban. But by golly, that was going to be the deciding factor for me. And believe it or not, it was. It was completely the deciding factor and one of the best decisions I ever made, in my life. It made for a very fulfilling college experience. So sometimes, parents, you never know. So as you get closer, say, to junior year, so maybe somewhere between 10th grade, then 10th and 11th, you should start thinking about your child's preferences and priorities for you. And let's say affordability, cost is an enormous priority for your family. Then you have to start doing your homework and making sure that as you look at colleges, you're not presenting options to your kids that are ultimately going to be impossible, right? If you don't want your kid flying to college, I did not want my kids flying to college. I just didn't want to do it. A long day's drive and staying overnight for me was fine, but you know what? I just felt that way. And my son was like, oh, California, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like,
I didn't even know this about you, Susan.
oh my gosh. But I was willing to drive anywhere. And we did. We looked at colleges. We took great trips, drove all over the place, had a blast, lots of happy memories, except of me leaving my cell phone in the bathroom on Route 81 or something and having to drive 3 hours back.
It doesn't sound fun.
My daughter points that out to me frequently.
Sure, she does.
I know. I'm
Well,
like,
I have 4 Ps that I use that
tell me.
yeah. Well, first of all, let me reinforce what you said. I do differentiate between early on in the process when it's great to just get onto a wide range of different types of schools to get a sense of what feels right. And that's stuff that's, certainly no airfare, no rent a car, usually not even a hotel if you're in a metro area. You should find enough schools. That's incredibly helpful when I'm working with a student, especially when they start with me younger. I want them getting on different campuses. I'll usually give them about 6 in their area, and I want them to tell me what they liked and didn't like. So that's early. But let's assume this is a little later. Let's say it's junior year, and a lot of people start this process. So my 4 Ps are proximate, meaning what's close. Let's look at what's close. Take advantage of what's close. It's the day trips, the closer ones. Let's go for that low hanging fruit because it's not as taxing time wise or money wise. So let's look at what's close. First P is proximate. Next is priority. Priority is any school that your initial research indicates this could be of high interest. Sometimes for some people, it's a potential early decision school. And we don't like to see people apply ED without a visit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we don't like to do that. I only have one exception for that, really, which is QuestBridge students that are getting the match and they're getting full cost of attendance and that usually don't have the resources to do it. So it could be a potential early decision school. It just could be a school that's risen to the top and your interest could be early action. If it's a high priority, let's see if we can do it. And then the next one is really important, which is practical. And practical to me is a couple things. We were going to see Aunt Betty anyway. We were visiting her and we're 30 minutes away from a college. Let's check it out. But then this is the really big one. And I find myself talking about this a lot in the counseling room. Practical is, can I get multiple bites of the apple? I don't want to see a visit where, especially if it's outside of either a long drive or a flight, and you go all the way there and you don't like this school. So that's a first thing. One of the first things I'm looking at is, do I see 2 to 3 schools here of interest? I was just talking to this with a student in Long Island I'm working with. And they're like, I figure we have 1 more visit in us, maybe 2, but I can say 1 for sure. Where should I go? I get this question a lot. Well, this is a student that has interest in Carleton that they know of. I think they could really like McAllister a lot from knowing the student.
Right.
And then, Carlton and Olaf are so close that they literally share dining rooms with each other.
Absolutely.
They're in the same town. And it's a beautiful school. So I'm saying you should go to Minnesota because you've got 3 chances to find a school versus they like Colorado College a lot too, but that's going to be 1 visit. It's going to be a whole trip. It's going to be airfare. It's going to be a lot. And I told them Colorado College also has a program that will help you, if you get admitted, show interest to get back there for an admitted visit program. So I like to look at that. That's a big part of practical for me. And then the last P is what you brought up earlier, which is price. You have to vet these schools for affordability. You have to think about it. When you walk onto the car lot, and they say, like, what should we be looking at? Are we looking at
Yeah,
$25,000 cars, 50,000 or 100? Well, if your budget is 25,000, you have no business looking at the $100,000 school. And so you need to vet the schools. We'll do different videos on how you can do that and how you can know in advance at least as good as possible, like what you're likely to be able to pay. We'll certainly have a lot of content up here for you guys on that. And then if those are that's the filter that I look through.
it's terrific.
Proximate, the low hanging fruit. Priority could be a very high interest or maybe even an ED type of school. Practical, we are going to be in the area anyway, or I got multiple bites of the apple. And then pay, is it something within my budget? And then normally from that, a couple schools will emerge. Now,
Well, Mark, how do you feel about not visiting until after you've been admitted?
that's okay. And a lot of times you have to do that, right? A lot of times it's a luxury, especially when you have someone that's looking all the way across the country. It's a luxury to think people have the time and money to visit everything up front and then go back to an admitted student visit program. So sometimes you have to do that either for financial reasons, time reasons, or somebody starting the process late. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that. For the person that's starting earlier and has resources to take trips, they almost never regret them if they're well planned
Of
out and well
course.
thought out trips. So I would say the ideal would be to try to get there ahead of time. It really can sharpen and fine tune what you like and not like. And you really can learn a lot about yourself by how
Absolutely.
you react to a place. But it's not everybody has the time or money to be able to do that. And so going to an admitted student visit is your only opportunity. That's also you should be able to discern enough with all the other type of research you're doing, whether or not it feels like it's a good fit.
And
So,
and don't view a visit or a trip as a failure if your son or daughter comes away from it saying, I can't see myself. My daughter and I took a 975-mile road trip. She had this feeling that Virginia might be the perfect place. We did and as a college counselor, of course, this was a busman's holiday
uh-huh,
for me. I loved
uh-huh.
it. But it's different when, you're with, but I'd been telling other parents how to do this for a long time. So I knew what I had to do. We visited, I think, 13 schools from the Philadelphia area around. That was when I left my cell phone in the bathroom
Were
on
you,
Route
were you
81.
going down 81? Because there's so many
I
colleges down
was.
81.
I was. It was
There
it
really
was
are.
just shocking. Bad mother
Yes.
moment. But we did that trip and we were on our way back. We had one more night and my daughter looked at me and said, I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
really done. Let's go home. The last college we were going to visit was the one that I was pretty darn excited about. But I respected, we would have had to stay that night in a hotel, do the
Yeah.
visit the next day. And so we went home. Guess where she went to college? The
That
last
last.
one.
Yeah.
But we went back, but
Hmm.
months later. But
Yeah.
we kept it on her list. But she had a much better idea then when we did fall visits of exactly what she was looking for. She was a much sharper, more astute visitor because we saw such a broad range of schools
Extremely
up
helpful.
front because she had pretty amorphous criteria
Hmm.
and a lot of the
Yeah.
students nowadays seem to be very precise, not all of them, but very very precise, and I feel like a lot of it is unfounded.
Hmm.
And as a college counselor, I need to challenge a lot of those assumptions. Also, not all urban schools are alike, not all non-urban schools are alike, not all big schools, small schools.
So true.
And I can give a student a list of wonderful matching colleges for what they're telling me. And they research them and they go to them. And this one was too big. It's the Goldilocks syndrome,
Sure.
as I call it.
Sure.
This one was too big. This was too small. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not the way they are. But it's the feel, it's the visceral reaction. And that probably is the only danger of waiting until after you've been admitted. But I also respect the fact that that's a feasible way for a lot of families to do their visits, is that they have to wait. And it's a good thing to go when you've been admitted because you're in the driver's seat and it's your choice.
Yeah, and certainly that you see a school a little differently, like especially if it's a somewhat selective school. A lot of people don't even know they're doing this, but they're guarding their heart a little bit. They don't
Yes.
want to fall
Yeah.
in love and know that they don't get in. But when you know that you're in and you just sort of, it's almost like you have another set of eyes. It's like you're someone who was struggling with your vision and you went and got these great contacts. And now you see things that you don't see. So I do encourage people to go back to admitted student programs, even if they have visited before, if possible, especially for their top two or three that are under serious consideration. A lot of
Absolutely.
times you'll see the school differently and when you do that. So,
And you may know more clearly what is most important to you. I had a student this year from Texas, lovely young man who was very surprised after being turned down at the early level, the early phase. He didn't have good results at all. So we padded his list a little bit. We enlarged it. He was very surprised then in regular decisions to get into Duke and Yale. I was
mhm,
too. Was I
yeah,
surprised? I was thrilled, but that's how things can go. So he's like, okay, Susan, how am I going to make this decision? He had gone to a summer program at Duke a few years ago. He'd never been to Yale, but he loved, loved, loved everything about it. And I said, Henry, it will be an enormous mistake if you do not go visit now. And I said, I know it's expensive, but it'll be money well spent. So he and his mom headed to New Haven, did a Yale accepted student thing, went back down to Duke, went home to Texas, called me, and he goes, if I had not visited Yale, I would have made a terrible mistake. He said, the academic pressure there would crush me. And I said, Henry, it wouldn't, but you wouldn't be a happy camper. It wasn't something that he would happily rise to.
right,
And he said,
mhm,
I'm very happy making Duke my choice. And I'm like, bravo, bravo.
yeah,
So they thought that money was very, very well spent,
yeah.
even though it resulted in a kind of unexpected. So
It's a lot more
sometimes,
money if you're transferring, I can tell you that,
good
and
point,
how can you put a price on dissatisfaction? So,
good point.
Susan, this is fun. I'm looking forward to doing some more of these. Listeners, if you're liking this content, we'd ask you hit the subscribe button, like button, share with a friend. And if you click the bell notification, you'll be notified as soon as we have new videos. And we're cranking out videos like 4 to 5 days a week, mostly short ones. Right now, we're doing a big series on commonly asked questions, doing a series on grinding, what's grinding my gears. We've got some longer form interviews. I'll have some soliloquies up. And then put your comments in because we want to know, like, what would you want us to cover? Let us know which topics you want us to cover, and we'll do our best to do that. So
Absolutely.
thank you, Susan.
You're welcome, Mark. Have a great day.
And we've been doing this for almost 25 years together. It never gets old. It's still just as fun as it was back in 2002.
Well, I love it.